Welcome. I'm Professor Katerina Zakaria. I'm a professor of classics and director of the Learning Community Series for the Department of Classics and Archaeology. This is our second guest speaker for this semester. Professor Monica Cyrino is a professor of classics and chair of the Department of Languages, Cultures, and Literatures at the University of New Mexico. She earned her BA in Classics at UC Berkeley and MA and PhD in Classical Philology at Yale University. She's the author of, listen to this, Big Screen Rome, one book, 2005. Second book, Aphrodite, 2010. And editor of Rome, Season 1, History, Makes Television. Second, Rome, Season 2, Trial and Triumph, these two separate books. Screening Love and Sex in the Ancient World. And she's the co-editor of Classical Myth and Screen, another book, stars Spartacus, Reimagining an Icon on Screen. Screening Love and War in Troy, Fall of a City, another book. Domina, Screening a New Livia for the 21st Century, that is forthcoming. She has won numerous teaching awards, including the National Society for Classical Studies Excellence in Teaching Classics Award, the UNM Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award, the Presidential Teaching Fellowship Award, the College of Arts and Sciences Teaching Award, and the UNM Alumni Association Faculty Teaching Award. So she is a true teacher scholar that we value in this university. She has also served as an academic consultant on several recent feature films and television productions. And today she will talk to us about dark horses and dead ringers, betting big on screen in Roman sport and society, a talk that explores the screening of the ancient Roman games in film and television, where sport, spectacle, and politics all converge in the arena. Welcome, Professor Monica Cyrino.
Wow, thank you, Professor Zakaria. Thank you, Katerina, for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be back here at Loyola Marymount University, which holds a very dear place in my heart, a very sentimental place. My husband and I worked here for 3 summers together in the early 90s. And in fact, the year we got married in 1992, we were working here at the summer program, the CTY summer program. You guys probably realize that in the summer there's all those kids running around and you're like, who are all those kids? So we worked here for 3 summers together, and it's very sentimental for us. And my husband's actually here today. He doesn't usually come and listen to me give a talk, but he's actually gonna listen to me today. And so I have a little surprise for you later. No, just kidding, I don't. All right, well, so today, as Professor Zakaria mentioned, my talk is going to explore a few aspects of the depiction of ancient Roman sport and spectacle on modern screens. So please come with me to the arena where we all spend so much time. Of this very famous scene, the chariot, from before the chariot race scene in William Wyler's movie masterpiece, Ben-Hur from 1959, considered by many film historians and movie fans to be the zenith of the mid-century Hollywood epic cycle. If you just want to remember a little bit of data about this film, directed by William Wyler, it was the most expensive film of its time. It won 11 Academy Awards on 12 nominations, still tied for the highest number with the film Titanic, and like I said, considered the peak of the epic film, mid-century epic film genre. If you guys remember, if you also recall, the main conflict in this film, the central focus and sort of driving force of the plot of the film is the intense emotional relationship between the protagonist, the titular Jewish nobleman, Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, and the power-mad Roman tribune, Messala, played by Stephen Boyd. And how that relationship is irreparably broken and devolves into deadly violence and is worked out in the arena. With this as its main narrative focus, the film Ben-Hur engages in the well-documented screen trend of movies and TV about ancient Rome by emphasizing the problematic relationships between men whose emotions are tested, tormented, and finally torn apart by the cruel realities of the ancient Roman world. So the seething enmity between these two, and you can see, a couple of these screen grabs that I've shown you here. You guys have probably watched the movie a few times, as I have. The seething enmity between the two of them, these ex-friends who grew up together in Rome, in the Roman province of Judea. Messala comes back as governor, and they have this just intense rivalry being played out, which finally is resolved in the famous chariot race sequence. So the scene that I just showed you, right before the start of the famous race, the two enemies, confront each other to work out this totally toxic, and I mean toxic, right? We use that word a lot nowadays, but this is a very toxic and ultimately fatal antagonism, right, in the arena. At the starting gate, Judah calms his team down of his white Arabian horses. Oh, sorry, I just put a little bit of the script up there for you. This is an earlier quote where Messala says, "Judah, either you help me or you oppose me. You have no other choice. You're either for me or against me." One of those kinds of friends, right? We all have those kinds of friends that give us those sort of ultimatums. Well, we hope not. So, right before in the scene that I just showed you, here is the clip from here's a little cut from the shooting script. Judah calms down his team of white Arabian horses as Messala enters driving his team of what are referred to as his black devils. He's brash, he's confident, he's wearing a black racing kit to match his horses, and he calls out to Judah, "This is the day, Judah. It's between us now." And Charlton Heston, through those famously clenched Hestonian teeth of his, right, he says, "Yes, this is the day," right? Judah is also warned by the Sheik Ilderim, who was played by the Welsh actor Hugh Griffith, who won an Oscar for his role, the Best Supporting Actor role in this film. He warns him. He says, "Don't forget, Judah. He's driving a Greek chariot. Messala is driving a Greek chariot, which means it is outfitted with lethal revolving blades at the end of each axle." And we know that the revolving blades has become something of a quotation in modern popular culture, as you see here in The Simpsons, but you can see this in the revolving blade shows up in a number of comedies, a number of films, and some of you probably know the revolving blades and don't even know that it's from Ben-Hur. But just thought I'd give you some Simpsons there, because what is a PowerPoint without some Simpsons? Before the race begins then, the charioteers parade their teams in a display of pomp and pageantry throughout the provincial arena. This is supposedly, this was shot at Chirichita. This whole thing was built from scratch. This is not CGI, that we're so used to. This is supposed to be the arena in Judea. The brand new governor, his name is Pontius Pilate. Perhaps you have heard of him, right? He addresses the eager crowd, announcing that the games are dedicated to the new emperor Tiberius, announces the international competitors. It's sort of like the World Series, right? Where there's someone from Canada and someone from LA, go Dodgers. And so he announces all the international competitors. He promises a crown to the victor, who of course is the first charioteer to complete 9 laps. This will be, of course, much easier said than done, but we know that the winner is, of course, Judah Ben-Hur. The other scene that I wanted to bring to your attention is the scene where Sheik Ilderim, the Sheik, he sort of encourages Ben-Hur to race for vengeance, right? He says, "Ben-Hur, I know that you want vengeance against this person, Messala, this Roman who has wronged you, has sent your mother and sister into exile and so forth. But if you come and race for me, me. You can race my beautiful white horses. Let me remind you, there is no law in the arena. Many are killed, as a sort of way to suggest, you can work out your vengeance against Masala in this race, in the actual race. I would show you the race, but it's a 9-minute sequence, and I think we don't have time for that. More interestingly for me today, for my topic and bringing it up to a more modern television show, is to talk a little bit about this betting scene that I'm going to show you in a minute. This is one of the only betting scenes that we have on screen in earlier cinema until it is resuscitated, revived in the TV show I'm going to show you a little bit about in just a minute. And in this scene, the betting is very personal. It's between individuals. It's not like they're going to a betting house or whatever. The sheik shows up in the bathhouse to bet with Masala and the Romans. You can see them there. The sheik comes with his entourage and a huge big bucket of money, right? Basically bringing the bag, right? As we say that someone's going to get the bag. And here is a little bit of that. Okay, so let me keep going on this. On this scene there. So this is, like I mentioned, one of the only betting scenes from early cinema where it's personal between the sheik and Masala. Again, from the shooting script, you can see here some of the dialogue where the sheik then looks directly at Masala and says, "You, Tribune, will you give me 4-1? And Masala says, 4-1, sheik. The difference between a Roman and a Jew." I'll just have you know that the actor ad-libbed that other part there where he said, "or an Arab," which was kind of interesting, given the late 1950s political climate at that point. So sometimes the shooting script will be different from what actors ad-lib and what they decide to keep in the scene. So moving on from here then, the chariot race scene, of course, is the famous long sequence, which I'm not going to have time to show you today, but just to remind you, this is where the sort of toxic and broken relationship between Masala and Ben-Hur is worked out. It ends in complete and utter destruction and devastation and violence and lack of forgiveness in a movie that really sort of, presents itself as a very, a very religious film, which of course the ending is very redemptive, but this portion of the film is very deep and very dark. And in fact, right before he dies, Masala says the famous line, "It goes on, Judah, the race is not over." All right. So here's the chariot race that we're not going to watch. Okay, so why is this important? Why are we interested in talking about ancient Rome on screen, right? Why is this important? Well, from the beginning of cinema and well into the mid-century peak of a film like Ben-Hur that I just showed you a little bit about, ancient Rome has always played and will continue to play a starring role as the perfect site for iconic characters, stories, and events that modern movies and TV series use to depict the breathtaking excitement and staggering spectacles of the ancient classical world, especially sports and spectacle. And I'm just going to show you some movie posters here of some of the sort of famous early films, the earlier Ben-Hur from 1925, the Sign of the Cross, a kind of, it's called The Sign of the Cross, but it's kind of a raunchy bit of a pre-code film with Messalina and Nero and so forth from 1932. The original, the first Cleopatra with Claudette Colbert in 1934. So I'm going to just show you some fun one-sheets like this. So here's some mid-century classics. So when we are in the viewing audience, we're invited to experience this lush cinematic recreation of ancient Rome, right? And it's deployed to accomplish a number of different objectives. The image of ancient Rome, the ancient Roman world on screen, can be used to support contemporary political goals, as we've seen with several films, to interrogate current social issues, and also to engage in cultural debates about the modern world's connection to the ancient classical past. Those of you who are in the classics program or have taken courses in classical reception from Professor Zaccaria or your other professors, you know what I'm talking about. So we have a few more films here. Quo Vadis from 1951. Ben-Hur, the Weiler Ben-Hur that I just showed you some clips from, Kubrick's Spartacus from 1960, and my student's favorite film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, from 1966, almost as old as I am. Pretty old. And then we've got a little bit going on here too. Yeah, so since ancient Rome is frequently used as a visual and narrative backdrop for adventure and spectacle, competition and romance, the audience is drawn into the screen and thrilled to see the luxury, the decadence, the sexuality, the excess of all kinds that we are told by the historians that the Romans notoriously enjoyed with their glamorous and uninhibited lifestyles. So we are the viewers of the film and the TV shows, the films and the TV shows about the ancient Roman world. We have engaged in this very long and somewhat, complicated relationship with the representation of classical antiquity on screen. And this is an engagement that has been well analyzed in the last few years by scholars and critics, including myself. You heard a long list of the stuff that I published from Professor Zaccaria. Oops, let me go back here. Just to remind you guys that the Roman movie Renaissance sort of started in the year 2000, on May 5th, 2000, which is my birthday, so it's always easy for me to remember that day, with the premiere, with the release of the original, the OG Gladiator, which I will say is much better than the new Gladiator, even with someone with very low standards, which I have very low standards. You can ask my friends that I do. So it started with Gladiator, the mini Renaissance, the real Renaissance started with Gladiator in 2000. And ancient Rome continues to be very popular in recent screen media. We have the Spartacus series on Starz Spartacus, which is extremely violent and very graphic. So just to, it's not suitable for work. Let me just remind you of that. The Eagle, a feature film from 2011. We also have, what else do we have? Centurion from 2010. We have The Last Legion from 2007. So a whole sort of little, sort of cluster of films and TV series that came out in the 2000s and the 2010s. So very popular. Even more recently, we have a couple of other, the new Gladiator, which just came out last year. If you haven't seen the German and Latin series Die Barbaren, I highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you are nerdy enough to like your Roman soldiers actually speaking Latin. So this is really fun. I absolutely love it. It's in German and Latin, and you can follow along and see how great the Latin is. And then also Professor Zaccaria mentioned that I'm also working on a new book about the series Domina, which reimagines Livia Drusilla, the wife of the Emperor Augustus, and it's from a female perspective. You can go ahead and take that for what it's worth for yourself. So when we are looking at ancient Rome on screen, we're exploring a lot of different angles as audience members, as students, as scholars, as just, fans of ancient Rome, right? Everybody thinks about ancient Rome every day. That's what the internet tells us. But Rome on screen is able to explore politics, society, culture, gender, race, all of these issues. And a little screenshot from Kubrick's Spartacus, and also from a screenshot from the OG Gladiator. And a gift from Spartacus, the TV series. So Rome continues to be a site where we're allowing ourselves to explore this. Now remember though, there's a sort of double motion when we watch the ancient Romans on screen. We love to celebrate their luxury, their glamour, all of these words that I put up there, I think you can read, I don't have to say all of them. The intensity of experience, right? You watch these beautiful costumes, these beautiful actors, right? It's a part of their job description. You have to be beautiful to be an actor, to be on screen. The gorgeous sets, the opulence, and so forth. All of that attracts attracts us as viewers. But at the same time, and this is what I call the sort of double motion, the ancient Romans on screen also reminds us that this was a society notorious for its violence, for its brutality, for its moral corruption, for its enslavement of peoples, for its colonial expansion and so forth, things that allow us to have conversations today about things that are going on in our own society today. So just like Lucy Lawless up there as Lucretia in the Spartacus series, sometimes we find ourselves a little shocked when we are watching the ancient Romans. So keep that in mind as well. So the sheer, oh, sorry, I didn't want her on there. I wanted that, yeah. The sheer viewing pleasure of watching ancient Rome on screen will continue to attract mass audiences, including ourselves, and including me, that's for sure. And it makes for good business of constantly having new things to write about. So just to remind you guys that you are in the position of the Romans as a viewing audience yourself, and you get to decide how you relate to that positionality. There's a big word they use over in the English department. Okay, what I want to talk about a little bit more now with my remaining time today is more sports, more spectacles, more betting. I'd like to introduce you, and if you haven't seen this series on Peacock called Those About to Die, there will be a couple of little spoilers, so just to let you know that in advance. This streamed last year on Amazon Prime or on Peacock. You can get it on both of those. The first season was 10 episodes, cost about $140 million, so it has a very high, sort of beautiful look and authenticity look. A second season has not yet been confirmed by Peacock, but the director has talked about the second season that's going to have like some Godfather-like flashbacks or whatever. So we do have some people talking a little bit about this series. And what I want to do is to show you the official trailer from the series, which I think gives you a good sort of overview of the series as an epic historical television drama. Okay, it is actually set in a historical period in ancient Rome in the 1st century AD, and it explores the world of the Roman games, but very specifically a moment of transition from where from the mass appeal chariot races to the more let me rephrase that, from the elite sport of chariot racing to the mass appeal of gladiatorial contests, all right? So we're gonna see a lot of sort of class conflict, a lot of political intrigue, and so forth. So let me show you the trailer. What you could see in that trailer there, I think that kind of gives you a good little taste of it, is that the series has 10 action-packed episodes, and it explores the world of big sports, the biggest sports that there were in ancient Rome, starting with, of course, chariot racing in the Circus Maximus, big ticket, ultra dangerous. I'll show you a couple of images from the ancient Roman world in a mosaic and also in a relief sculpture there. You guys can follow that along for yourself. And moving from that Roman sport of chariot racing to the rise of sort of lavishly produced, mass appeal gladiator shows. And those of you who've seen it, you know that there's, the same thing as in the new Gladiator with alligators and animals and so forth, that it seems that modern directors and showrunners cannot resist showing us those kinds of images. And so we do have a historical setting for this. So I know a lot of people are interested in the historical setting. And what we have here is in the show, the moment of transition from the chariot racing to gladiator combat, and this coincides with the inauguration of the Colosseum. Colosseum. But just to remind you, right, for many, many years, the Circus Maximus was the venue for chariot racing. Some of our archaeologist friends, I am not an archaeologist, but I am told that this site might even go back to the 6th century BC. It could have perhaps there could have been about 200,000 spectators sitting in the Circus Maximus. Those of you who have been to Rome today, you know you can still walk around it. A lot of modern, contemporary Romans, not ancient Romans, maybe ghosts, they like to go jogging around the track, right? It's kind of used as a jogging or picnic area. And you can see here the recreation, the CGI recreation that the CGI artists use for the television show. So we've got one setting in the historical Circus Maximus. Oh, this, by the way, is referred to as a hippodrome for the Greekies in the audience, right? A sort of a horse course. Does that make sense? A horse course, a horse race course. And then what we have is the transition to the building and inauguration of what is known in history as the Flavian Amphitheater, but of course we know today as the Colosseum, right? The Colosseum probably starting to be built around 70 AD, was built for about the following decade or so, and you'll see many shots in the TV series where it's sort of being built, which is kind of cool, right? And from an engineering perspective, you can see how the characters engage with the sort of construction site that would have been there. Of course, Rome is always a construction site, right? Those of you who've been there today, but even in ancient times, Rome must have been quite the construction site. So the series kind of looks at, the first season of the series looks at that decade of building of the Colosseum. Here's another shot where you can see the sort of scaffolding and so forth that we're all very familiar with, those of us who travel to Rome today. So yeah, so the history, again, just to locate it in history, the show actually begins in AD 79. We're toward the end of the reign of Emperor Vespasian. You guys all know from your history, right? 69 AD was the year of the 4 emperors. Vespasian is the one that ends up, kind of winning that. I think it would be kind of funny to go back to 69 AD and ask the Romans if they referred to it as the year of the 4 emperors themselves. I don't think they did, but that would be funny. Like, hey, how did your year of the 4 emperors go? Yeah, it was pretty good. I got a new job or whatever. But anyway, so the series starts in AD 79. We're coming to the end of the reign of Vespasian. The Colosseum is being built. It's a year of catastrophes, right? We know Pompeii or Vesuvius exploded that year. There was a plague in Rome. The series kind of weaves in all of those catastrophes. So it's kind of very interesting from a historical perspective. We have, of course, the Flavian dynasty, which is Vespasian himself, and we've got his 2 sons who are sort of struggling to decide who is going to succeed their father. I'll talk about the characters in just a minute. We've got his son, his elder son, the general Titus, and then his younger son, who is Domitianus, who is talks about all the time how he is the aedile ludi. Remember that the aedile ludi is the guy who's in charge of the games, so it's a very important job, as well as being, what do you want to call it? The very important in the show in terms of staging the public games and so forth. And the word for you Latin people out there comes from eides, right? Meaning the infrastructure, the building of this. And what we have here again is the very common in ancient Roman movies and TV, the brotherly rivalry motif, right? If there's going to be 2 guys, I don't know if this is a Romulus and Remus call out or whatever, but usually when there's 2 men, they're usually in some sort of brotherly rivalry, whether it's like Ben-Hur and Messala, whether it's like Commodus and Gladiator, or Commodus and Maximus in the original Gladiator. We see this brotherly rivalry motif quite often. The final episode of the series, of the first season of the series, gives us the inaugural games. Titus has become the new emperor, and we see in AD 80 the flooding, the famous flooding of the Colosseum that historians fight about. Could you actually flood the Colosseum? I don't know. I'm not a historian, but my historian friends tell me that if they were gonna flood the Colosseum, they could have done it before the sort of under passages were built. But again, filmmakers and TV show runners are absolutely fascinated with this idea that the Colosseum was flooded, and they staged mock sea battles in there. So this is what takes place in our show in the final episode that takes place in AD 80. And I just want to remind you that this sort of celebration of the modern sort of sports complex. You can see where the Circus Maximus was placed near the Colosseum. Has modern echoes today. Here are a couple of imaginings of what the new soccer stadium is going to look like in Rome. For those of you who are fans of soccer. This is, of course, the Roman soccer team emblem, so you can see that they take it very seriously, the Romulus and Remus aspect. But in terms of reception then, the idea that we owe our sort of fascination with sports and spectacle to the ancient Roman world is something that filmmakers and TV show runners, of course, take very seriously in terms of entertainment. And of course, for those of us who are Angelinos, we know that we also have a lot of beautiful stadiums just within very close driving distance to us, especially SoFi Stadium, where the Rams play, and our roommates, the Chargers, which is sort of the anchor of a sports entertainment district. And they really play this up in the television show as well. There's BMO Stadium down there over by USC, which is where our soccer team plays, and of course, home of the world champion Dodgers. Dodger Stadium up there, a cathedral of a baseball stadium. Just to show you guys that. So, what we have in the series then is, I'm just going to give you a little bit more in my remaining minutes, a little bit more of some teasers to think about in terms of what you get in the series. So within this historical setting that I just described to you, this historical hook, which is, fairly authentic and I think is done pretty well, we have a lot of reference to Roman social history as well. So, for example, we get a lot of talk about the four factions of the chariot racing factions that were controlled by the Roman elite, the blue, the green, the white, and the red. This is talked about quite a bit, and all the elites, owning, shares of the chariot racing factions, and they're always like scheming, trying to get more, and trying to outdo each other. And of course, the more they win, the more tickets are sold, just like today. So there's a lot of correspondence to modern, interest in sports. So a lot of political intrigue in the plot involving the upper classes, especially the senators, Titus and the sons of Vespasian, Titus and Domitian. So a lot of the political intrigue. But what they also do in this show, which is very interesting, is that it also shows us the striving classes, right? In a lot of earlier Roman recreations, we get the elites and then we get the enslaved people, right? It's very rare, and I think maybe HBO Rome started this, but it's pretty rare to get the sort of middle classes, the striving classes in between the chariot racers, the small business people, businessmen, businesswomen who are running Roman society at this point, making it work, and we get to see a lot of these sort of inner workings of these other classes of Romans. What the series does completely new, very original, is that it looks at the reality which we know very little about, so they do exaggerate at some points. They look at Roman sports betting and gambling. So for those of you who are interested in this, it's kind of a cool aspect that the show does. It presents Roman sports betting not as a personal one-on-one thing, like I showed you that scene from Ben-Hur with the sheik betting against individual Romans, like the Tribune Messala, but here it is presented as an organized public business venture. Again, we have some evidence for this, for those of you who are history types and interested in that we have laws and regulations, but it seemed to have varied quite a bit from administration to administration, right? So depending on who was consul, who was emperor, or whatever, sports betting took on different contours. So the show goes with organized betting in betting houses in businesses that surround the Circus Maximus and surround the Colosseum. And of course, again, let me just remind you that big money sports betting is something that is also very prevalent today. How many of you have a fantasy football team, right? Some of you out there, nobody wants to admit it. Whatever. Anyway, big money in sports. You see here the big screens in Vegas, and I just put for you here just the popularity of professional sports betting. I guess you could add college football to that now, right? It doesn't even make it into some of these more modern discussions because it is a relatively newer thing compared to big professional sports. So let me just move on then, and so what I wanted to, I'll go for a little bit more. Let me just do a couple of the characters for you. So we have a focus on the actual charioteers who were competing in the chariot races at the time. There was an actual, mentioned by the poet Martial, a charioteer called Scorpus, who is a character in the show. His dates are a little fuzzy in terms of the way the show is focused on AD 80, 79, 80, but we'll give them a little pass on that. Let me just go to give you a few of the characters. The show also focuses heavily on the addition of a fifth faction of chariot racing, which is also historical, that Domitian added actually 2 new factions, and this one only focuses on the addition of the gold faction, which is something that Domitian did when he became emperor. Let me just point out a couple of the characters so that you guys, because I like actors and I think that their craft should be rewarded. So, as Vespasian and featured very prominently on all the one sheets and advertising for the series is, of course, the most famous actor, Sir Anthony Hopkins, who plays Vespasian. But this is what's called a geezer teaser in Hollywood, where you get a famous actor who comes in for just a little while, right? He's dead by episode 3. Sorry for the spoiler, but just like Vespasian himself, then Titus becomes the emperor. As Titus, we have Tom Hughes, who does not smile throughout the whole series. You guys probably remember him from the Victoria series, where he played Prince Albert, and he also did not smile. So if you watched that series, he is a non-smiling person. As Domitian, and just to mention, also another historical character, Laura Wolf plays Berenike, the Jewish client queen of Rome, when at the conquest of Judea, where most of the enslaved peoples were gathered, who actually built the Colosseum. They really go into that in the series as well. I kind of skipped over that because of time, but I did want to point out that she is in the series because they needed some female characters as well, but that she is positioned as the lover for Titus, and she's given kind of the Cleopatra treatment in the sense that she is the sort of unpopular foreign queen that's trying to ruin the Roman lives or whatever. So she's kind of given what I call the Cleopatra treatment there. As Domitian, we had the actor Jojo Macari, who does a really wonderful job playing the slightly, more smiley but more villainous younger brother. And of course, as the more villainous Roman, elite Roman, he has to have some sort of edgy sexuality. So he has a young Greek lover named Hermes, and so he's shown to have this more sort of, shall we say, broader taste in sexuality that we find usually with elite Roman characters, which, if you know from your Suetonius, Titus was actually fairly vanilla in his taste, and Domitian was fairly vanilla in his taste, and it was actually Titus who had more lovers of different genders and so forth, and different classes and so forth. So after, I'll do a couple more. After the death of Vespasian, the brothers vie for power. We see in the last couple of episodes, just like in the show Succession. We also have the plebeian characters led by Tenax, as you guys know. Ewan Rayon, I never can pronounce that Welsh name, but you guys probably remember him as the Game of Thrones badass Ramsay Bolton, plays Tenax, who's in charge of, he's sort of the bookie in charge of the betting tavern. We also have Sarah Martins, the Portuguese-French actress who plays Cala, and she works with Tenax, but she comes to Rome to protect her family, her two daughters who are enslaved, and her son who is sent to be a gladiator. And I won't do the spoilers there, and you can find that for yourself if she is successful. She works in Rome, taking care of business in the betting tavern, and she sort of becomes a bit of a love interest and a will they, won't they situation with Tenax. There's, and these are the last two slides, I promise, Caterina. There is a group of 3 brothers that come from Spain with their beautiful white, fast Andalusian horses, and they also provide love interests for the daughters of Cala. And finally, I just want to mention probably my favorite character, and a lot of people's favorite characters, is the actor Dimitri Leonidas. I think he's Greek, I'm not sure. As Scorpus, the celebrity charioteer whom you saw, I mentioned before, and plays a very important role in the series, helping to start the new faction. There's a lot of sequences I could show you of him racing, and he actually, the actor talks about how he actually learned how to race. And I'll just end with this. This is the actual quote from Marshall, where he mentions Scorpus. I am Scorpus, the glory of the noisy circus, the much applauded and short-lived darling of Rome, envious fate counting my victories instead of my years, and so believing me old, carried me off in my 26th year. So this is where Scorpus is actually mentioned in the literary record, and so they used his name. So just to remind all of you guys that the reception aspect of this is very important when we see ancient sports and spectacles shown on TV or film screens. It brings us back to our own, beat the 49ers. Brings us back to our own issue of spectatorship, because we are all still in the arena in one way or another. So with that, I will say thank you, show you, and then this is me and my honey at LMU some 30-some years ago. So I want to thank all of you guys and thank Loyola especially for bringing me the love of my life, my soulmate, and one of the best research assistants that there could be in helping me go to all these sports games. So thank you very much. Sorry, I had to to skim over some of the topics, but I'm happy to go into them in more detail if you have questions. Yeah. Come on down. That's kind of...
Hello, my name is William. I really enjoyed your presentation. My question was, I was wondering if you could tell me what that central line of structures was in the middle of the hippodrome, and if it was ever mentioned in any of the movies or TV shows that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and our historian friends and archaeologist friends will talk about the meta, right? The meta is that thing in the middle. You can see pictures of it from the one they built for Ben-Hur. This one is CGI, obviously, the one that they do for the television show. But a number of ancient historians mention it as the turning area, what the chariot races had to go around, right? And in fact, I'm more of a literary scholar. Poets actually refer to it too, like I'm turning the corner on my relationship with my girlfriend or whatever. And so they speak of the meta as being something that you have to get around, right, in order to be successful. So yeah, again, I think that the designers of the CGI designers for Those About to Die for the television show, they probably didn't read Livy and Tacitus. They watched movies like Ben-Hur, right? And so they see that. In fact, they use the same fish for the laps. I think the designers just said, hey, those fish are cool. And so they use I should have shown them to you, but there are these fish, and every time one of the chariots goes around the lap, there's 9 laps in a typical race, right? One of the fish then would be pulled down. So there'd be a stadium attendee pulling down each fish as the chariots went around the meta. I don't know what we would call that in English today. A turnpost, turnstile, turnpost, the central area. Yeah. So that's what it's called. Yeah. Thanks
Awesome.
for the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Does that mean there were people standing on that would turn that down? Because it's pretty thick.
Yeah, it would be very dangerous, right? And actually, in the chariot race sequence in Ben-Hur, there's several times where I'm sure people had to work there. Yeah, pulling down the fish, for example, or just running out and grabbing pieces of shrapnel or whatever that fell off of those axle, wheel shearing axles or whatever. So there's several parts in that 9-minute chariot race sequence in Ben-Hur where you see them jumping back into the meta section to stay safe, because obviously if you're driving a chariot, you want to stay as close as possible. You need to have a wide angle to make a successful turn, but a tight angle, even if you're a race car driver, right? I'm like, I assume you are a race car. No, if you make a tight angle, you're going to go faster, right? You're going to get around better, but it's more dangerous. Right? So yeah, so definitely people had to be working there, and I bet you, they had some serious workman's comp issues because it was probably very dangerous. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. Good question. Hi.
Hi, I'm Cosmo. I'm a screenwriting major, so and also a classics minor. So I thought it was interesting. So have you worked as a consultant and stuff for them?
Yes, I have. I've worked in different kinds of consulting. There's so many things that I have learned. Cosmo, let me tell you, I wrote like half of my books before I even understood anything about how filmmaking and TV show making really works. And the first time I went on set, I was like, oh my God, it's not just like Virgil writing a poem, right? It's 1,001 people, like thousands of people working together and making micro decisions, right, every day. So yeah, so I've done stuff where in projects in development that you're not there, and they're super secret, right? You know, as a screenwriting major, everything is super secret, right? Which I'm sure anyone who knows me can tell you that's really hard for me because I tell secrets. I would get fired from the CIA. Maybe not this CIA, but not the current one. But anyway, so I have worked in development, like helping to do pitches. I've worked on what's called script coverage, which you know what that is, but for other people, when there's a screenplay already done, you go in and you basically write a review of it, right? It's like a letter of recommendation for the screenwriter, right? That they can say, oh, this comes from a fancy professor or whatever, right? I've worked on set doing historical, academic, and and linguistic consulting on vampire movies, because as you all know, vampires speak Latin. Everyone knows that. And so they always have to get you on set to help them pronounce the Latin. And then you say, how old is your vampire? Because, you know, it could be Latin, classical pronunciation. And what else have I done? And I'm thinking about someday maybe writing my own screenplay. You know, hey, let's work together. We could do that. So yeah, so I've done a lot of different kinds of things. But it's been eye-opening. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I wish I could go back and rewrite some of the stuff that I wrote, you know, early on. But some of my more recent stuff, I think, reflects the kind of real-world experience that I've gotten in doing all those levels of things. So, are you writing a script about the ancient world?
I am. I'm adapting Orestes into a comedy right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because a lot of laughs in that story.
Yeah, lots of laughs. I think it's really fun. I'm trying to turn the whole. Anyway, don't worry about it. But it's a total bummer, and I'm trying to make it funny.
Yeah. Email me. You know,
yeah.
we can talk. I mean, because there's a movement now toward that dark comedy thing. Did you watch Chaos last year?
I have not yet. But
yeah,
I've heard
cue
good
that
things.
up. It's on Netflix. It's pretty dark. It's a comedy, but it's very dark, and you might want to see that just as a comp, as you know what the word means. You look at that as a comp and see where you want to be on the dark comedy scale. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little dark.
Oh yeah.
Who watched Chaos? Did anyone watch Chaos last year? A few people? Yeah, Justice for Dennis. Anyway, let me know what you think after you watch it.
Yeah. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
My name's Alexander. I'm studying economics here at LMU. My question was about, and you touched on this a little bit in one of your last slides, but what do you think Hollywood kind of exaggerates in like all of these series or movies? What are like the most common historical inaccuracies that you find, aside from the example you gave about the sports betting?
Yeah, wow, that's such a great question. And one that, you know, a lot of people are interested in, right? And even Hollywood is interested in trying to be accurate. That's why they hire people like me, even if sometimes they don't use you. They're like, here, we're gonna pay you, but just don't say anything. You know, we're just gonna do what we want. That happens a lot, right? But in terms of like, I don't know, there would be obvious things like, for example, I'm sure Jordan could tell us a little bit more about armor kits, like Roman soldier armor kits. This extends to the Greek Trojan War stuff, right? Christopher Nolan is doing an Odyssey right now. There were a couple of images released, and the military historians of the internet lost their minds, you know, because it was like the wrong helmet and stuff like that. So I think probably the most common, the most upset that people get, that historians get, is about military outfits, types of shields, types of kits, I think is the word you would use, right? A military kit, is that the correct term, Jordan? And, you know, the type of swords and so forth. And also the outfitting of the horses, the chariots themselves, the use of stirrups, right? Which we know that ancients didn't do. They would move the horses with their knees and so forth. So there are things that modern actors just can't do that ancient people could have done. So I would probably go along that route, along the sets and stuff. But just in terms of other historical accuracy, you know, they just kill off people, make people live longer, historical figures, you know, as much as they want. Oh, this is a fan favorite, this person doesn't die, you know. So that happens a lot too.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Alexander.
Thank you so much for this talk.
Oh, thanks.
I have a question which I've always been wrestling with about the adaptation of Rome in Hollywood, and I'm hoping maybe you could help me shine some light on it.
Uh-oh.
Is there a reason in your suspicion or in your experience for why the empire is always chosen as the setting, and we have comparably almost nothing that is set in the time of the Republic?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and my colleague John Solomon and Maria Weick have talked a little bit about it in their original works back from the 90s. The only sort of republic setting one is the Spartacus tradition, right? So, and that of course is a really fulsome reception trajectory that starts with operas and plays and novels, and then there's a very long cinematic and televisual reception reception trajectory for Spartacus. So we do have that one. Setting that aside, we have a lot of Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, Antony stuff. So there's the transition, right? But yeah, I think, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. This is spitballing. I'm going to ask you what you think, too. But I think that the empire is more attractive to American Hollywood filmmakers and to some extent Anglo-American, so Ridley Scott, people who are English also, because of a kind of, imperial, a tendency to associate America or England or even modern Japan. We were talking about that recently with how popular Roman recreations are in Japan right now. There's a kind of empire nostalgia, or maybe nostalgia is too sweet a word. There's a kind of empire identification, I think, with modern filmmakers. And I think because the characters are so naughty and interesting and well documented, that's also something. But yeah, not too many Republic. Maybe that hits too close to home. I don't know. What do you think? You're a historian.
I've always struggled with this because I find when you look at the Founding Fathers, for example, they hate the empire, they hate the transition to the empire, and they're always encouraging people to study the Greeks and Republican authors to learn how a republic works. And it seems like there is some sort of transition in America from a originalistic elite culture that values the republic towards a mass culture that has become almost pornography obsessed with the empire, that wants to see corruption, and almost it creates a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy with the entertainment it's consuming. But that's a larger issue.
Yeah, no, and I tried to suggest that, that from the very beginning of cinema, filmmakers, creative people have kind of profited from that or benefited from that in that dual identification where we're like, what? No, Roman? Like you cover your eyes, especially during the code films and stuff like that, like Ben-Hur or something. So you could say, oh, but it's history. Look how naughty and brutal and corrupt they are. But it's history, and so you could show it, but then you have to subvert it, right? By the end of your film or of your TV show. So I mean, even in this show that was done just last summer, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have the evil character, right? The evil character, which is Domitian, who actually was a pretty good emperor, right? From what I understand from history, compared, to what came later. So,
okay.
Yeah, so it follows those tropes, the ones that you just outlined, and it makes for an interesting double identification, right? Like, are we the Romans? Oh God, no! But that was fun watching them, right? So you get to like, just like Aristotle said, right? You get to put yourself into the story, but then you get to remove yourself from the story too. That catharsis. So I don't know, but there's
Thank
a
you
book
very
there
much.
for a book there for you. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah. Do we have time for another one? Yeah, we do. Oh yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. I'm Sebastian. Nice to meet you. Actually, I had a very similar question. My question was going to be on why the fascination or the obsession with Rome in American culture, and especially the portrayal. And so what I was very similar to what I was going to ask. I was going to suggest that maybe that's because of how the country was founded and the founding based on the Republic, but that would be countered by the fact that there's almost no portrayal of the Republic. So I guess my question now is because I don't want to be redundant, is more so, do you find a lot of the portrayals, a lot of modern portrayals are portraying Rome in a favorable, disfavorable light, or even like matter of fact, like this is just, right, like you said, the history, this is the way it was. Yeah.
That is such a good question, and luckily there's so many now, right? And every one of them is going to have its own spin. Like I mentioned, Die Barbarin, the German production, which is very interesting because it's coming from German creative team. It's about the Teutoburg Forest, right? So it shows the Romans losing, kind of very interesting, right? Why would a German creative team choose this story, their national hero, Arminius, and so forth? So I think you have to really look at these creative teams. Like, why are they doing it? Well, number one, to make money. That's their number one. They're not trying to do anything. They're not trying to teach students. They're not trying to give Monica reasons to write books or give lectures, right? They're trying to make money, period, right? So they want to sell tickets and they want to sell streaming subscriptions, right, to you and to everybody here. So that's their number one thing. So they want to get eyeballs. So how are they going to get eyeballs? You might look at your market. So who's the market for Die Barbarin? Mostly the German market, though there's some here in the U.S. too. The new series Domina, right? This actually explores a very interesting period of time from the proscriptions to 31 to the Battle of Actium. Hardly ever, I can't think of another show or film that does that. Early life of Livia, right? So it focuses on the early life of Livia Drusilla and then onto her marriage with Augustus that is more familiar from I, Claudius and so forth. But the first part of that I should mention to you, to your question as well. So I think you have to look and see what their agenda is in terms of how they pitched it. One of your friends was just talking about being a screenwriter. You have to pitch something, right? I was in a pitch meeting with the Game of Thrones guys recently, and the people had this idea, I probably can't talk about it, but it had to do with the Spartan agoge, okay? And the Game of Thrones people were like, yeah, we're just kind of over swords and stuff. And that's what they said, it's a brilliant idea. It would be really cool, right? But they were just like, we're moving on to do something else. So you want to always think about the position of, where the creatives are coming from, who their audience is, and then there's these broader questions, like in general, Anglo-American productions are more fascinated with the empire and with Roman Empire than anything Greek. They like Greek mythology, but Roman history, right? No Roman mythology or Greek history, hardly, except Alexander. Because he's kind of a proto-Roman, or something. So, there's a little bit there. But it's not really a very specific answer to your question, but at least hopefully give you something to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks for the great questions, everyone.
I hope people will be interested in watching the series, but also in writing about the connection between the data and the ancient world. We do have a class that is called Ancient World in Film, which we hope that will offer in fall. We teach a number of film courses. I teach a summer course on Greek cinema. In spring, representations of Greece course that includes internship with the Greek Film Festival. So if you are in screenwriting or film, TV, and media studies or film production, come to us. We teach a number of courses that are cross-listed, but also will give you background to understand how the creative process is working. And one item that I think you raised, the series Rome and this one that you talk about, they present how the normal people who are not slaves and they're not elite are. And this is really connected with our world and our contemporary worlds right now, where the kind of the invisible people of the ancient world become visible, or we want to make them visible by looking at what was in the periphery or what didn't have a voice and was silent to actually give physicality to them. And this is very connected to our world and our time. And so it's interesting to see both what the creative team is, but also what is happening in the world and how specific events are connected to this reception of ancient themes, ancient stories, and our big spring. The creative teams actually are backing big on making money out of this film, so that's also something up to that point. Thank you all for being here. Thanks, everyone. Make sure you come to our next event, which is a presentation of student reports from archaeological excavations on the 17th, I think, of November. Check on our website and also come to the Saturnalia, where my two colleagues, Professor Jordan Christopher and Professor Chris Gibson, are in charge of the Saturnalia on December 4th, where there is a celebration for the holiday, okay? And we're cooking Roman and Greek food. So, please come, thank you, Gianna.